Good evening and welcome to the October 26th meeting of the Civil Service Commission. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian.
Here.
Hatamian.
Here.
Gregorian.
Here.
Gantis.
Present.
Devine.
Here. Next item, please.
Present.
Minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. We have unanimous consent?
Abstain. I have to abstain.
Yes, Mr. Nukin was not here, so that's 4 yes. Next item, please.
Oral communications.
All right, I have one card that's marked oral communications. I have two that it's not indicating whether it's for oral communications or another item. Geraldine Yumping, did you want to speak on oral communications or on item number 10? I didn't hear you.
I'm actually talking on item number.
Okay, thank you. And Mona Montgomery, you didn't indicate what you're speaking on. Is it oral communications or item number 10?
I'm Mona Montgomery. I think it's probably number 10. It's regarding Fuentes.
Thank you very much. All right, I have one card then, Barry Allen for oral communications.
I was going to come up there and get into the photo op, but I guess I shouldn't do that. I'm Barry Allen. I'm with Van Guardians, and there's some interesting things that are bothering me about. Is this a 5-minute or a 3-minute? 5 minutes.
5 minutes. No.
Okay. First of all, is there any way that the gain on Mr. Gantis's microphone could be turned down because it's so booming and it's almost threatening?
I will speak much softer. I apologize.
Oh, that would be
Mr.
great.
Allen.
I have some issues. 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, there was no disclosure that Mr. Gantis had, well, he did make a disclosure that he had an ex-parte communication with the police chief. He also did not disclose his role in the Glendale Police Foundation, which is supporting the police department, which I believe, even though there may not be a financial issue involved, there certainly is the perception of a conflict of interest. I also am given to understand that he has had, in the past, ex-parte meetings. He has had serial meetings. You can do that in 12 years, I guess. But I'm also very concerned with an issue on the agenda that I won't speak to, is that Mr. Gantis has had litigation against the City of Glendale and the Planning Department in for different clients. And I would think that those particular issues he may wish to recuse himself on one of the items on the agenda today. I bring it up at this point rather than during the comments and deliberation, because I think it is that important that Mr. Gantis disclose the lawsuits that he was involved in for his clients. Obviously, I don't think he did it pro bono, so it did have a financial conflict of interest. And some of those lawsuits may have impacted on issues that will be coming before this body later today. I bring that to your attention, and I thank you very much. I'm Barry Allen.
Thank you. May I have the next item, please?
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this report deals with the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting, approximately 2 weeks ago. According to the report, we have 2 lists that have been established, both of them promotional. The report indicates the total number of applicants that have been received for these processes, as well as in the far right column, the total number of candidates who made it onto the eligible list. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, are there any questions on the eligibility list? Seeing none, that's no action required. Next item, please.
Human Resources Activity Report.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is an annual report that we put together documenting the activity that's conducted not only by the Civil Service Commission but by the HR department in general. This report is following its presentation to the Commission. It is then brought before the City Council at one of their regular meetings. And essentially, this report goes through many of the various functions that the HR Department and Civil Service Commission handles in a given year. This report is quite lengthy, and again, if the Commission has some questions or concerns, I'd be happy to try and address those. But just a couple of the highlights, which I'd like to point out. In the summary, we talk about recruitment activity in the city, and it has remained somewhat stable, although we do see the number of new hires somewhat decreased. But what we're seeing is actually a slightly increased number of applicants, which is indicative of the state of the economy right now and people looking for work. But again, with our hiring on the low side, we're seeing more applicants, unfortunately, for fewer openings. We did see approximately 3,600 applicants total from last year, and most of those we did have come in for testing at various stages, whether that's a written or an oral or performance exam. That number has been as high as 8,000 to 10,000 in certain years, depending on some high-profile recruitments that we may do, whether it be a firefighter recruit or police officer, or something along those lines. A couple other areas I want to hit upon would be the separations from city employment, essentially our turnover, which has gone from a rather low number to another low number. We're at about 5.64% turnover here at the city, which for an organization our size is indicative of a very stable workforce. And if you look at the majority of those in the who have left the city, probably 60% of those were due to retirements. So again, we still continue to see a very low turnover here at the city. Probably one of the bigger impacts that we're seeing in general as recruitment activity, testing activity slows down a bit is really the most significant impact we're seeing is more activity in our labor relations area, which is reflected in both the labor negotiations that my staff participates in, as well as the meet and confer processes that occur amongst our various bargaining groups. And there's a primary reason for that is that previously we had multi-year contracts, memorandum of understandings with our respective employee bargaining units. Often they were multi-year contracts, and we would have 2, 3, even 4-year contracts with these groups. Since the economy has had some difficulties in the last 3 to 4 years, we have sort of shied away from those long-term contracts and focused more on just 1 year to see how we do from 1 year to the next. As a result, we end up negotiating every single year. So in the past, where we would see one particular bargaining unit every 2 to 3 years, now we're seeing every bargaining unit every year, and it's a lot of negotiation, a lot of activity, and most of those negotiations involve the city seeking concessions on the employee's part. So it's been rather difficult in that area, but again, a sizable increase in that particular workload. Again, those are some of the highlights. Again, this report goes on for 5 or 6 pages, and I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chair, if you have questions or comments or concerns. I would like to, before we conclude this, commend Debbie Mallon from my staff, who compiles this data from various members of my department, and she puts it all together in a very cohesive, clear manner where you can see not only this year's numbers, but how we compared to the previous year. So I do want to commend Debbie. I think she's out there. So.
All right. And on behalf of the Commission, I will do the same. Outstanding report, well done, very comprehensive, much appreciated. And at this point, I'll ask if any of the Commissioners have comments or questions on the report.
Yeah, go ahead. On this Part 3 applicant services, it's nice to know, the public is here, that 283,248 hits, number of hits, the city website for job. So that's so many people, they color and ethos, and I wish we had a chance to hire every one of them. So, but that's very encouraging that people interested to.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gregorian, the website is pretty active with regard to our jobs and people seeking employment. In fact, I'm told that it is the number one area on our website that people go to, is where we list our job activity. You also see in that same section something called, in Section 3E, something called Twitter. I am by no means an expert on Twitter, but essentially it indicates we have 132 followers. Those are people who essentially follow the city of Glendale. Every time we have a new job opening, they receive what's called a tweet. And certainly we've been doing this since January of 2011, and we hope to increase that number of followers on Twitter. So again, along with some of the more traditional methods of recruitment and outreach, we also are try to stay contemporary with some of the newer methods as well. So.
Very good. Mr. Tomian, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Doyle. My compliments to this report, and the way the format is set out, it's very easy for us to understand what's going on in the city as far as the disciplinary aspect of it, which we're concerned with. I do have one question pertaining to training and development, which is under Roman numeral number 9. And I'm basically just doing a comparison between fiscal year 2009 and 2010, where we had 3,332 employees attending training, in comparison to the current fiscal year 2010 and 2011, where we have 2,332 employees. In my opinion, there's a large discrepancy of employees, about 1,000 employees who are not attending, let's say, training. Is there a reason for that discrepancy?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hatamian, yes, the reason for the reduction in that number from the 09-10 year to the 10-11 has to do with our mandatory sexual harassment training class, which we offer every 2 years. That session was offered in fiscal year 09-10 for a better portion of that year, and then it was not offered in the 2010-2011. So we're required under Assembly Bill 1825 to offer that to all employees in a supervisory capacity and a lead worker capacity. We actually extend that requirement for the City of Glendale to all of our employees, because we believe it's important that they be trained in workplace harassment. So requiring every employee, both salaried and part-time, to attend that course accounts for about 1,800 to 2,000 employees. So again, the fact that was offered one year and not in the next, that's probably the most significant factor in that reduction.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll have the next item.
Report on advertising budget expenditures, July of 2011, September 2011.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your quarterly advertising expenditure report. This reflects the activity from our advertising from July 1st of 2011 through September 30th, 2011, the first quarter of the current fiscal year. As you can see from the report, we've expended approximately $4,400 in advertising over that period of time. You'll also note the total budget for advertising is about $40,000. This is, again, somewhat appear to be on pace to stay well below the $40,000. That leaves a balance of approximately $35,000 for the remainder of the fiscal year. And this is somewhat normal recruitment activity at this phase in the fiscal year, where we do at the early part of the fiscal year, there are a lot of reorganizations and things like that, which mainly affect promotional type exams versus open recruitment exams. And obviously with promotional exams, there's no requirement to do any type of external advertising. But we have had some open recruitments, and the report is broken down into 3 categories. The first being the advertising expenditures on those publications and websites targeting the ethnic communities. The second part of this deals with specialized trade journals, and then the third part is really general publications such as the LA Times, Glendale News Press, and other areas. We again try to spread the training around, particularly amongst the various ethnic publications. The specialized trade journals, obviously, you're going to see advertising done for that specific field. You see a position of energy marketer trader where we've advertised in a Power Marketing Association website and Energy Central Cybertech publication and things like that. So anyway, this at this point in the year, we do have a moderate expenditure, and we fully expect to be well below our budget by the end of the fiscal year at this pace. So with that, if you have any questions, be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? I was just wondering, does the $36,000 carry over to the next year, so you would have $76,000 the following year?
Mr. Chair, no.
Okay.
And it's
Just a thought.
It's not a use it or lose it sort of thing. If it's not spent, well, I guess it is. It is use it or lose it. So we lose that.
Okay.
So, but we look at that in the next year and determine if we only spend $20,000 of that, then we kind of reassess whether we need $40,000. But it's hard to predict our recruitment advertising needs from one year to the next.
I think we had a similar budget last year, too, wasn't it? I mean, I remember you were way below the...
Yes. We tend to be very conservative. And frankly, in this day and age, we're doing a lot more advertising on websites versus print publications. And websites are really, really inexpensive. I can go back, I mean, I've been here over 20 years. We used to spend probably $150,000 per year on advertising. And a lot of that was LA Times Sunday newspaper ads, which were very expensive. They were like $1,000 a piece, but
I remember.
we really don't need to do that any longer. There's a lot more effective ways. And as I've said before, most people find out about our jobs through our website.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Can we expect next 5 years to keep the same budget? I mean, the same level of expenditure? That would be nice.
Commissioner Gregorian, we're aiming for that. And I will be here 5 years from now to make sure.
No, please, everybody's leaving, so give us some support. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the agenda forecast is provided for you. We have our next meeting, November the 9th. We have a brief report per Commissioner Manukian on CalPERS, and we're putting that together, and we will have that for that meeting. Additionally, as you're aware, we have as many as 3 hearings going on as far as our disciplinary appeal processes. So our activity continues to be very busy. And we anticipate no meeting for the second meeting in November due to the Thanksgiving holiday, and that leaves us with December 14th, the next meeting after that.
Okay, any questions on the agenda forecast? Seeing none, may we have the next item, please?
Reports and information.
Mr. Doyle?
None.
None? Okay. Next item.
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
Mr. Gantis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As all of us know, 1 week ago last Thursday, we lost what has been characterized as the People's Mayor, one of the jewels on the crown of this jewel city, former mayor, not ex-mayor. As he always said, there are no ex-mayors, only ex-wives. Former Mayor Larry Zarian. I knew Larry very well, probably not as well as, certainly not Mr. Commissioner Gregorian, and possibly I haven't talked to Commissioner Manukian. But to put it in a nutshell, I certainly liked what former Mayor Carl Raggio said in his letter, that Larry was the only person that could take a 25-word, something that somebody else could do in 25 words, certainly not me, and do it in 125 words. Larry loved the word, loved the speech, but above all, he loved Glendale. He loved serving the city of Glendale. He loved his community, the Armenian community. He loved the entire community of Glendale. And we truly lost a jewel. And Larry is going to be missed in many, many facets. His laughter, his seriousness. As I was telling Commissioner Gregorian, it began before that, Mr. Larry had a very, very profound impact upon my service on the Civil Service Commission. And for that I will be eternally grateful to him. I think he had a profound impact on our service as a whole. I don't want to go on because obviously we have a large agenda, but I would request, Mr. Chairman, that we adjourn this meeting in memory of Larry Zarian.
That will be done, and thank you for the very nice words.
I say something about Larry Zarian too. Commissioner Gantes energized me to say a few words too, because know Larry since 1976 whenever I moved in Glendale. One thing that he always was telling me, and especially young generation, in order to be a good person or be a good Armenian, you have to be a good American. Then you can be a good Filipino, Latino, Armenian, Russian, whoever you have. So basically that was his word all the time, and I had the pleasure that he gave me a pin 20 years ago when I became a commissioner. So when I was during the ceremony, I put the same pin and put it on his casket. I says, Larry, you love the city, and hopefully you can use it on a very good occasions and give us your spirit and support to us to serve the community and the city that you love. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Staff? Okay. All right, we'll have the next item.
Open hearing, public employee discipline, Edith Fuentes.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, this will conclude our televised portion of the meeting. The remaining two items on tonight's agenda involve disciplinary appeal hearings. One is open, the other closed. Per City Council policy, disciplinary appeal hearings are not to be part of the televised meetings. At this point, we'll take a moment and allow Channel 6 to conclude their broadcast, and then we'll proceed with item number 10.
Thank you.